Hey, good afternoon. I'll go ahead and start. My name is Taiwo Mcgill. I'm with Veeam Software. I'm local to Houston, sales engineer. I support mostly SLED and commercial accounts across Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. And this afternoon, we're going to discuss Veeam's secure approach to ransomware protection and remediation. Quick on the agenda, we'll touch on a couple of statistics on breaches, as well as Veeam's multi-layered approach to zero trust. What Veeam is now and next, and also we'll talk about our cybersecure program that we newly announced this year to help our customers, whether it's pre, during, and post cyber incidents. So Veeam does a survey to over 1,000 accounts across the world. They're random, no matter what applications they're using. And they had this survey about, when have you been breached? Have you had a ransomware incident? And 85% of those 2,000 companies said that they had an incident. 19% of those were able to recover without the ransom, and then 25% of those never got their data back after paying a ransom. So there's never really a guarantee that even if you pay the ransom that your data is available or that they didn't exfiltrate it and sell it anyway. So this discounts the people who didn't want to say whether or not they were, hit by ransomware. So it's not about if, it's when. Most companies are having multiple ransomware attacks a year, especially if they're unable to recover properly from the first one. They become targets. So one of the things that are in place, if you guys ever heard of NIST, the NIST framework, this is National Institute of Standards and Technology. They've come out with a framework that if you're looking at any vendor in your environment, they should be following these standards around identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. This is really we'll talk about how Veeam fits into this strategy, but just overall, this is a standard that you should be following with any vendor that's going into your environments today. As far as Veeam, we have a lot of certifications, a lot of federal customers, over 1,400. Our software is secure. We get tested. We have outside third parties test our software, try to hack it, look for bugs. We're real transparent on, whether or not we have vulnerabilities. It's all about following these standards to make sure that the application and your environment is secure. So what is Veeam? Veeam Data Platform is really made up of a couple of modules. The foundation of it is backup and recovery. Veeam's been in this space a long time, started in the virtual environment space. We now support, one of the largest workloads that are out there today, whether it's virtual machines, databases, applications, SaaS, multiple hypervisors. We're able to support that. Also through native APIs, we can support third-party applications like Oracle, SQL, and also in SaaS environments like Microsoft 365 and Salesforce. So being able to cover a broad number of workloads to protect under one foundation engine. Also includes monitoring and analytics and recovery orchestration. We'll talk about how this fits into our pillars of being able to recover quickly, being able to analyze, detect, and then also being able to recover from a cybersecurity event if you can't prevent it, to be able to recover quickly. So, our zero trust approach is really about having multi-layer immutability, whether it's in the application, whether it's where the data is actually stored, right? You want to have multi-layers of securing not only the application, but the data itself. The fastest recovery options, which are RTO, RPO. If your data is somewhere and it takes you 5 days to recover, is that going to meet your business outcomes, right? Your SLAs to the business. What's my fastest recovery options based off of my backup? Mobility, right? What if my data center is not available? Can I restore into another hypervisor, to another data center, to the public cloud? Be able to monitor this stuff, and then again, being able to verify my recovery, because you never want to know if your recovery doesn't work when you need it. So to be able to test that, verify it, report against it, is one of the things that Veeam can help you with. So what's our zero trust architecture that we talk about? We are really, it's all about, assume that you've been breached, right? Your production's been breached. What if the backup software was breached? Am I still able to recover? Well, if I have immutable storage, I have multiple copies, I have things like multi-factor authentication and authorization where I can protect my actual backup software, right? I'm always able to recover no matter where the breach happens, whether it's in production, whether it's in the backup software, or whether it's at the actual data. So we'll talk about immutability. I'm sure everyone knows it's kind of a normal thing now, but to have your data not being able to delete it or encrypt it or changed is definitely something that you all guys should be looking at. And not only just one copy, but multiple copies and in multiple locations. So what's that without Veeam, right? You have options out there. There are solutions that are all in one. You don't have a lot of options. You store it on their box or in the cloud, right? We actually give you the flexibility to store different locations, different type of systems to ensure that immutability. So where does that come in handy? If a specific system has a vulnerability or it gets hacked, if I have the same system everywhere, if I have the same storage everywhere, now that all my storage can be compromised. If I have different storage, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, these are all going to be secured separately and then be safe. With Veeam, you can write direct to object, right? Local storage, we support cloud storage and cloud on-prem storage, object storage. Also allows you to make multiple copies so that, again, you're having that 3-2-1, 3 copies, 2 off-site, different media. Here's just showing those options. Primary copy, usually on-prem, closest to the data, production data. That secondary copy, that's going to be off-site, whether it's a secondary data center or the public cloud. And then also archive, being able to really have that storage utilization. If I have long-term retention, no need for me to keep it on expensive disk, but I still need a copy of it. I can archive that off to an archive tier or capacity tier to allow me to maintain that data efficiently. You always want to make sure that it's encrypted at rest and in flight, right? So that at all times, whether it's moving from production to the copies, it's always encrypted. Even if something happens to that data, somebody intercepts it, they cannot read it, they can't access it. So the questions are, what will you recover from? Again, Veeam gives you these options, whether it's tape, object storage, offline, actual backup appliance. We support multiple backup appliances, over 90 storage vendors that we support. So for you, not only can you get the variety from the different options, but you also have the ability to use existing vendors. So if you have tape in-house, we can use that. If you have an existing storage in-house, we can do that. We can actually make your storage immutable with our hard repository. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility, not only from a economical standpoint, but again, resiliency. You want to have, multiple resilient zones within the infrastructure. So just going over a real world example. We had an organization that was hit for ransomware. The actual response was that, hey, the DC is unavailable. How can I recover my data? Well, having multiple copies of that data in DC1 and in DC2, really all we had to do was stand up a Veeam environment with a virtual machine and start restoring, doing instant recoveries into the secondary data center. So for that customer, they had no access to their primary data center, but they had copies of their backup data. They were easily able to access those backups and then do restores into a secondary location. Then let's talk about, your fastest recovery options. So backup is nice, recovery is better, and really it's all about the time to recovery. So you hear people talk about RTOs, recovery time objectives, recovery point objectives. This is all about how fast can I get my data back and how much data will I actually lose. Well, with Veeam, we actually invented the instant recovery for VMs. And so we also have that for virtual machines, for databases, even file shares that we can instantly recover, make available to be used in case of an emergency. So I'm not waiting to restore a large virtual machine that's going to take hours. I can instantly publish that virtual machine or the application, and it can be used immediately. That helps me take down what we call my RTO time. So being able to recover all these different ways are always going to help you and give you the fastest options. Let's look at those options. One, we have what we call a replica. So we can actually replicate virtual machines at the hypervisor level. So that will allow you to really, the speed of powering on a VM is how fast that you're going to be able to recover. So that's at the hypervisor level. The other option is through snapshots. We support over 90 storage vendors to be able to recover from a snapshot, knowing what's in there, recovered into production. It's really going from disk to disk. This is going to be always your fastest RTO, just based off of that. We also support immutable snapshots. So if your storage snapshots are immutable, we can still see the data that's in there. We can restore it as quick as possible. So just recently, I did a test with a customer, and we did a couple of restores, backups and restores. So we backed up a VM about 5 terabytes. It took about an hour to back up. We turned around and we restored it. Again, it took an hour, a little more for it to actually restore. The basic backup and recovery of a virtual machine. So they had they were testing a storage, new storage vendor. And so we said, hey, we integrate with the storage vendor. Let's do a snapshot, back up the snapshot and restore from snapshot. They said, sure, let's try it. Well, we called up a snapshot, which took about a minute. He said, well, what about a restore? We did an instant recovery from that snapshot. That virtual machine was up and running in less than a minute. So what would normally take an hour based off of that implementation, then only took 1 minute to recover. That's huge. Being able to restore to different places. Maybe my data center is not available. I can take any virtual machine that I back up and I can restore it into a different hypervisor or into the public cloud. So if you're in Azure or you're in GCP, if you have your backup data up there, we can actually just convert those backups into the appropriate virtual machine infrastructure, and you can be up and running. Second example, this particular customer had storage snapshots. They were replicating. They got hit with ransomware. Again, DC became off limits. A lot of times when you're in a cyber event, if there's forensics or if the law enforcement's involved, right, you're not going to have access to that data. You have to rebuild everything in another data center to have access. With this particular customer, they broke off the sync. We installed Veeam. We looked at the snapshots that were available from the replicated storage, and then we were able to do instant recoveries from that snapshot. This is huge because we can actually just look at a snapshot. Veeam didn't back up those snapshots. They were snapshots made by the hardware vendor. We were able to look at those snapshots with our integration, pull them out, and restore them instantly. This will take, things that would take weeks to restore, now they can do them in days. So we talk about mobility. Veeam stores this data in portable files. What that means is that no matter what happens to the backup server, the backup infrastructure, as long as your data is immutable, safe, you have multiple copies, we're able to read those data files and recover anywhere. That's huge. Again, not being able to have a secondary data center, you can restore it into the cloud if you have a presence in the cloud. If you have maybe a provider or MSP that has a site that you can restore from, you can restore to them, right? This just gives you maximum flexibility on how it can recover. When you're in a cyber event, and it's a lot of scramble, it's a lot of hecticness, people don't know what to do next. As far as from a backup and recovery standpoint, if I know that I have known good backups and I can recover anywhere, then all I just need to know is when and where, and I can start the recovery process. So again, just being able to recover into all of these different formats based off of our portable file will allow you that flexibility. Yes?
Yes, sir. You said no good backups. What do you suggest that we do to test to ensure that?
Yeah, so that's a very fair question. So during the restore, we can actually scan those backups. So we can restore them in an isolated environment. You always want to scan your backups when you're talking about a cyber event. So we can spin those virtual machines up or that workload. We can scan it against your whatever antivirus you're using in the environment. We also do things like YAR rule scanning. So we scan against known files, known malicious file types that are out there. And so now we can tell you if this is actually a known good copy. We also do inline malware scanning during the backup so that if we detect something, we're going to give you that really live information up front versus finding out later on down the road that, hey, you've ingested some malware. We can't stop that malware from being backed up, but we can let you know that that malware is there.
It's still there.
Correct. We automate that for you. Yes. Another real world example, again, hit by a ransomware attack, DC unavailable. I have access to my backups. I can restore anywhere. In this case, this customer restored into Azure, scanned those backups, they were back online. Obviously, you have to have things like infrastructure in place in the public cloud, but if you already have that in place, then right, you can start restoring at the point of time. But if you don't, you have things like VMware on Azure, or if you have an MSP where they're going to have the same type of infrastructure that you have available, we can restore there also. So what do we do about monitoring? So Veeam 1, we actually can monitor not only the backup application, not only monitor making sure that things are being backed up, but we can also monitor your actual virtual infrastructure. Really, when you talk about have an attack and you want to correlate information to see kind of where that attack happened, the blast radius, you really look at different tools and you want to ingest different alerts so you can kind of correlate those things. We can help with that by sending those alerts to a SIEM or SOAR, right? Hey, we noticed a big spike in CPU on these virtual machines. That's also get an alert that, hey, we also found malware during the backup. Now I can really deduct when that actual event happened, and then I can restore from that previous known good restore point. Here's just an example in the job. You can see here, hey, we found suspicious file sizes, right? We look for anomalies like, normally your backup is, 10 gig. Today it's 1 terabyte. What happened? You had all of these changes. That's usually a sign of an encryption event. If you know that on the average, I only changed 10%, but all of a sudden now the change is 100% or 200%, that's what we call an anomaly. Now I'm gonna go back, I'm going to investigate. Maybe somebody just added data to the system. You verify that, you're good to go. Or it might be an encryption event. Either way, we can monitor that, we can report, we have our own framework that you can look at, and you can also look into things like Splunk or Palo Alto. We even have integration with ServiceNow. So we have different integrations so that not only the backup administrator knows what's going on, but also the security team knows all of these events are going on also. They can combine, they can correlate, they can work together for recovery. Here again, this is just showing where we're monitoring the infrastructure, and we can see spikes, whether it's in CPU, RAM, hard disk. We're pulling all that information out of the hypervisor. We're getting that, we're polling that information, it's real time. And so now, again, it's all about correlation and knowing what type of suspicious activity can possibly be an event. Yes? This is part of Veeam 1, which is the monitoring and porting piece of it, and it's our own engine that's been built. The AI stuff, that's with the malware detection and the file entropy, that's also built in, but that's strictly on the backup streams. This is actually monitoring the infrastructure itself. So this is actually connecting to your virtual environment and seeing these spikes. Again, we can set up alerts so you can be alerted whether it's email, whether it's send it to another security tool, right? That's within Veeam 1. Again, outside of backup and recovery, now I can monitor and report, and it's really another way of keeping my data safe, knowing if I'm in danger, knowing if I have immutable backups, knowing if I missed a backup, or maybe there's some suspicious or what we call anomalies within that. And that all feeds into our threat center, which really gives you kind of this security score about your ability to recover, what's your security posture within the environment. We map out, if you have data around the world, you can see we can map out actually where we find any malicious or malware within the environment, and we can report that into our threat center. So automatic recovery, so automation, the ability to automate recovery is a big thing, because if you're in an event, maybe you have a list of all of the VMs that you need to recover first, the order, right? You have this DR plan that's on a PDF. We can take that and we can put it into our recovery orchestrator. And so now what I can do is I can dynamically document what I'm testing, my DR plan. I can test my RTO and RPOs. And if an event happens, I can fail over knowing that I've tested the failover before. I know that it works. It's part of that being able to recover in that NIST requirement. One click. Obviously, people talk about one click. There's other things that have to happen in a recovery process. But if I have to recover, say, a full application set, I can have a recovery plan for that. I can test it. I can also schedule the test for things like malware and viruses so that I know that these things are a known good, right? These are all of the steps that you have to take. There's no easy button. It's processes and people, but really it's all about, do I have all these checks and balances in place so that I can go to the business and say, hey, I know that we can recover in case of any type of event. So we just talked about this, the recovery verification. I can schedule spinning up VMs and applications. I can test them. I can run, hey, can I ping it? Can I run a script in SQL? Right? Do I have access to it? I can scan it for a virus. Now I can publish that. I can actually report against that. And now even for things like cyber insurance, they want to know, are you able to recover, prove it? Well, if I run a test, I have the documentation, I can just hand it to them, and there's my proof. So that process is what we call secure restore. It actually gives a private VLAN. It allows you to restore and understand, hey, do I have any infections? If not, I can continue to restore, right? If I have some found, I can restore without the network. Maybe I want to do forensics against that, right? Or maybe I just want to stop the restore if I find something there. And also integrate with multiple security applications for virus scan. And if any of these virus scans have a command line interface, we can connect to them. These are just the ones that we have direct integration with: Symantec, Microsoft, and also Trellis, not up here. But just understand, we're not the be-all. We rely on security products to do their part. We're not a virus scanning technology. We want your virus scanning technology to be able to scan that data and let you know that it's safe. So kind of back to that cybersecurity framework in Veeam, just showing kind of where we fit, right? When we can identify malware with Yara rules analysts, being able to protect with the 3-2-1 rule, having multiple immutable copies, the inline malware detection. The response is really about, using Veeam 1 or any of your security tools in-house, right? We really just want to be part of the ecosystem. As far as, we can't stop ransomware, and we're not going to prevent it. We're going to help you know that it's there, and we're going to help you recover from it. And it's just another opportunity. It's just another layer in your cybersecurity program that you have today. So here, Veeam released 12.1 earlier today. If you're not familiar with Veeam, we added a lot of security enhancements as part of the product. The things that I've talked about are based, like malware scanning is a feature. It's not a product. Being able to do Yara scans is a feature, not a product. So it's in your base product. You can say that, hey, my data is protected. Immutability is in the product, things you don't have to pay for. We have integration with MDR and XDRs like Sophos. We did introduce a application for Palo Alto. So now if you are using their XO or XCM, there's actually a Veeam app that could bring the data that we talked about, those alerts, into that platform. Again, correlation. Security team knows about it, so does the backup administrator. Everybody's on the same team. And then we also have apps for ServiceNow and Splunk. Got a question? And just for the future for Veeam, we're working on things like a Linux-based server and tighter integration with other security products. More to come. The Palo Alto actually was just released about a week ago, so that's actually new. Veeam 13 will be coming in 2025. We'll have a lot more kind of integrations with security products, a lot more enhancements as far as securing the Veeam product itself. Lastly, I want to talk about our cybersecure program. And this is really big because this is all about being on your journey from pre-incident, during, and post-incident. It's when you have a cybersecurity event, there are a lot of things that have to happen even before you actually attempt to do a restore, right? There's people and processes in place, whether it's a threat actor, whether it's something, a malicious insider, right? You have to have all of these things kind of in place. So what does Veeam provide, right? We have this complete end-to-end, what we call end-to-end, to help you in that protection, right? From being able to verify your backups in a clean room. We have threat detection, rapid recovery, right? Those are all functions of the actual software itself. But then we have this incident response team. And so the incident response team is the person that when you have an incident, you call the person. That one person is going to be your point of contact through the whole cybersecurity incident. What do they do for you? We actually can do forensics on the actual malware. We have a database of known malware out there. We know the threat actors. We can identify based off of the encryption. Oh, we know what group is behind this, or maybe it's state actors, right? You need to get the FBI involved. We'll call your insurance provider, right? We'll negotiate. Hey, we've seen this encryption before. We have the tools to crack it. These are things that most solutions can't do for you, right? This is a consultative end-to-end when it comes to cybersecurity event, all the way to post-incident and documentation. Along with that, you'll have quarterly health checks, make sure there's no configuration drift, make sure that at all times that your data is good and available for recovery. And this is really going to put you in your best posture when it comes to any type of cybersecurity event. I'll leave it open for any questions for Veeam about the product, about cybersecure. We have a booth out there, obviously, and I appreciate your time today.